Trinity Missions, and I'm so glad you're able to join us for this session today. Father Mike, why don't you say a word about Trinity Missions and your role?
All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome. Yeah, my name is Father Michael Barth. I'm a missionary servant of the Most Holy Trinity, and right now the COO of Trinity Missions. Trinity Missions has been around over 100 years, and we do great work in 7 countries, serving the most abandoned and poor and preserving the faith. Our priests and brothers are busy daily with medical clinics and with food programs, with outreach, recovery ministries, sacramental ministries, all sorts of things. They do great, great work. So we're so happy that you're here, as John mentioned, to share in this information, which we hope is both helpful to you and maybe at some point to Trinity Missions as well. So thank you.
Well, we have a great hour ahead of us. I'm thrilled that Eric Brotman is able to join us. He's been a long time friend, colleague, and a trusted advisor. And he knows a lot about gift planning. And that's an area that we've been noodling about a lot more recently. Several of you and many other donors have asked us about options as they are maturing. And we thought it'd be good to spend some time walking through several of the vehicles that are commonly used for gift planning. So, Eric, why don't you say a word or two about yourself and get us rolling here?
Thanks, John. As John mentioned, my name is Eric Brotman. I'm the CEO of BFG Financial Advisors in suburban Maryland. I've known John almost 20 years and have been involved in financial planning and philanthropy for now over 30 years. And my hope today is that we can talk about a couple of concepts in layman's terms. I don't want this to be a technical. This is not a lecture, or I'd hope it's a dialogue. So we have Hannah Dennis, the amazing Hannah Dennis, in the background, who will be accepting questions. So there's a chat box on the right. If you want to ask questions during the presentation, she will gladly interrupt me. She will also be very happy to hold some questions to the end, and you're welcome to do that as well. But it's good to be here, John. Thank you.
So, Eric, we experience bequests, as the dominant way that people are transferring their legacy giving to us. But I know there are a number of other vehicles. Can you talk a little bit about bequests and the importance of them, and why would someone be interested in using a bequest to support a charity?
Well, a bequest, in the simplest terms, is just leaving money to a charitable organization upon your death, and usually it's done under a will. And in that situation, property that could go to any number of beneficiaries is specifically earmarked either as a dollar figure or as a percentage of your estate to go to a philanthropic organization. The reason people do bequests a lot of times is because they have a strong desire to help a mission or to help a charity, but they don't necessarily know the ways to do that during their lifetime, or they're afraid that they might need some of those resources themselves. And while they want to be philanthropic, they also want to make sure that they're able to handle their own aging process and their own expenses. So, John, it's a combination of a desire to do benevolent things and be generous, but also sometimes a hesitancy to plan during lifetime, or at least to give during lifetime.
Mm. Oh, in terms of bequests and families, do you normally find any tension there when a parent is trying to make those decisions and others are looking over their shoulders and trying to help them be more
That's a
thoughtful than maybe they are
that
being?
That's a great question, and the short answer is there is a tension. Frankly, the best practice is to have great communication, and
Mm,
having communication within families, and frankly, teaching philanthropy to your children and grandchildren along the way, and showing a lifetime spirit of giving, I think, is a really important thing. You're always going to have the possibility that any heir, is feeling um, cheated or taken advantage of or left out in some way,
mhm.
and clearly that's, in most cases, that's not any parents or grandparents desire. But having open communication and saying, this is some of the gifting I really want to do, this organization is very important to me, and then still providing for other family members in the way that you want. I think there is a tension, but I think a lot of that can be solved with good planning and really open communication.
And is it necessary to have an attorney be involved in this process? I know we are using a program that many other nonprofits are using, free wills, a
Mhm.
platform that's available so that people can actually get on and do it themselves.
Doing a simple will does not require you to hire an attorney. You can do those in various ways online. They still have to be notarized, they still have to be formal, and you can easily name a bequest in the will that way. I would say for most families, it is better though to get some professional advice from a lawyer who specializes in estate planning, whether you're trying to do this from a tax perspective. And I know we're going to talk a little bit about some of the benefits of charitable giving from a tax perspective, or whether it's just identifying the right assets to leave to the right organization. So,
Mm.
for example, some organizations are in a position to accept gifts of real estate or other property that's not liquid. Other organizations say that's very thoughtful, but we can't accept that because we don't have a team of folks who can handle it. Some
Mhm.
organizations have very large planned giving departments and set up charitable gift annuities and other programs, and others are smaller and are not in a position to do that. And so understanding which charities you're aiming to support and how they function and how their planned giving departments function is important. And so having donor intent starts with having a conversation with the charity. And when you speak to a donor and they say, yeah, Father Mike, I'd really like to make a gift to Trinity Mission. How do I do that? That's
Yes.
when you can say, first of all, thank you. And second of all, let's get you in front of some of the right people, be it financial people, tax people, or legal people, to do it the right way. I mean, it's annual giving is something a lot of people do. A lot of people make annual gifts, and our tax code is no longer set up for most people to benefit from that anymore from a tax perspective. So there are strategies to work around that. And we have a couple of suggestions, Sean, in a slideshow. And maybe if we jump into a few of those, we can go in depth on some of
Yeah,
these
that'd be very
ideas.
helpful.
All right.
Yes.
Do
So
that.
Thank you.
so Hannah, let's start with IRA beneficiary designations. I'm sorry. Let's start with qualified charitable donations. Like I said, she's the boss. I just do what I'm told. It's fine. So this is a relatively new area of tax law and an incredibly valuable one. So to create some history here, when you have a traditional 401k or 403b through your employer, or you have an IRA, which is an individual retirement account, and you have that on your own, you have typically taken a tax deduction for your contributions, and you've grown this pile of money over your lifetime. And then when you're ready to retire, you start pulling money out of that account and it's taxable to you as ordinary income. In English, that means it's taxed the same as a paycheck. So there's not a lot of planning around the way it's taxed. In addition, there's something called a required minimum distribution, the RMD rules, which is frankly the federal government's way of saying, we gave you this break for all this time, now we want our money. And so what that means is you have to begin spending the account down by formula. And right now it's folks 73 and older. That age is growing over the next couple of years to 75. But once you reach that age, you're forced to take money out of your IRA, whether you want to or not. And some people would say, well, why wouldn't I want it? Of course I want that income. The short answer is there might be reasons why you don't want more taxable income in a given year. For example, it might raise your Medicare premiums. It might eliminate some financial aid opportunities for your family. It might create taxes on your Social Security income. There's lots of different moving parts to this. And so understanding the way income taxes will affect you plays a role. But if you have RMDs, you have no choice. You must make a distribution. So Congress stepped in and said, well, at the time, the limit for RMDs, you had to be 70 and a half. That's gone up. But charitable contributions can now be made by any American taxpayer with a traditional IRA or 401k or 403b at age 70 and a half. And you can make a gift of up to $105,000 this year in 2025. And it not only is it fully tax-free to the charity, it also counts toward or satisfies your required distribution. So yes, you must take money out of the IRA, but if you don't need it, or if you prefer to give it to charity, instead of taking the money, paying taxes on it, and then writing a check out of what's left, you can actually have money sent directly from your IRA to your favorite charity, and the
Yes.
charity does not pay ordinary income taxes on it. This is a major opportunity for folks 70 and a half and up. Yes, there's planning that can be done around this. Some people would say, well, now I'm giving gifts that could go to my kids. And what I would suggest is for people who do annual giving, If you give $5 or $10 or $15,000 a year, or whatever you do, whatever is generous for you, if you're doing annual giving and some of it is done through your IRA this way, it will reduce your tax burden and it will satisfy some of the RMD. And because of that, it also preserves your other assets because you're not writing it out of your checkbook. You're not writing it out of your brokerage account. So it has a dual benefit to you of going directly to charity and therefore reducing the size of your IRA and reducing future taxable distributions, while at the same time preserving some of your other liquid assets. So there's a lot of pluses here. And
Yeah.
it's one of the first places that we tell folks to go once you're 70 and a half. Now, one caveat is that when these contributions are made and these distributions are taken from an IRA, the forms that you receive from the IRA provider, from the custodian, say that it was a distribution. They do not specify that it was a charitable contribution or distribution, which means you have to note that on your 1040. You must note that on your tax return because they do not delineate between whether it was charitable or not. And what you don't want to do is accidentally pay taxes on money you don't have to.
Right.
Exactly.
Good point.
Yeah.
Very good point.
Yeah.
And you mentioned the age is going to change. Can you
Well,
say
the
more about
age for the donations doesn't change. That's staying at 70 and a half. The age for required distributions has gone up. Now it's 73. It's going up to 75, but you can still make distributions at 70 and a half. And so, John, what we see is we see a lot of clients who are trying to preserve wealth for the next generation, and the IRA is the perfect giving vehicle for charity, because if you don't give it to charity, either you're paying taxes on it or your kids or grandkids or other human heirs are going to pay taxes on it. And Secure Act 2.0, and I hate to get super technical, but there was a major change in tax law a couple of years ago that now says that if you inherit an IRA and you are not a spouse, anybody else, you have to take all of the money out of that IRA within 10 calendar years of death. Now, there are a couple exceptions for minor children and some special needs planning, but for the most part, it's 10 years. What that means is that you have no choice but to, over those 10 years, take some form of distribution and potentially a very large amount of money and pay taxes on it that year. That could change your tax bracket. That could change your life in an adverse way, believe it or not. And the $100,000 coming to you in an IRA is not $100,000. It's 60 after all the various taxes happen, plus or minus. So you could either take 60,000 for yourself or you could give the whole 100,000 to charity. And I know a lot of people would rather see all 100,000 go to charity than 40,000 go to the government.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
I'm wondering if there's a variation on that theme that might be important to jump to, and it's probably somewhere, in the slides here.
Yeah.
But donor advised funds, would this be an opportunity to use a donor advised fund if in fact you weren't sure how you want to distribute that 100,000 or whether you wanted to do it all at once?
Great question. And we are going to talk about donor advised funds because they're terrific, but you are not allowed to take a qualified charitable distribution from an IRA and fund a donor advised fund. That has to be done directly to a charity and it has to be done the same tax year. So while I love what you're thinking, and boy, would that be a great piece of legislation, I think you ought to take that to your congressperson right away.
We will try.
Yeah, take that directly to them. I would love to see that. But right now, you cannot use a QCD
Exactly.
to fund a DAF, unfortunately.
Okay. Good
But
to
we
know.
will talk about them because they're very powerful tools for lots of reasons. In fact, I've done that myself. Fortunately, I am not 70 and a half yet, so I can't do this, but I do have a DAF, so I can talk about that a little bit personally.
Okay.
Okay. And
Any
before
other, yeah, go ahead.
well, before we leave IRAs, can you talk a little bit about the Roth? Is there something we need to know about the Roth?
Well, the Roth IRA is a phenomenal saving vehicle that allows families or individuals to grow money in a way where post-tax dollars are contributed, the money grows tax-free, and it comes out tax-free. That's not great for charitable giving. That's great for leaving to kids, because even though the kids have to take it out in 10 years, they don't pay taxes on it. So ideally, you want to leave Roth IRAs to family and you want to leave traditional IRAs to charity. And look, there's no one size fits all ever, and charitable intent, if somebody wants to leave a Roth IRA, Trinity Mission, you're not going to say no. But it's not if they want to be charitable, there are better ways to do it for them, probably.
Okay.
That's helpful.
Great. Very
All right,
good.
What's next
Hannah, let's move. So the next one's the one I wanted to start with in the first place, but
Okay.
apparently I'm confused. So let's talk about beneficiary designations. You had mentioned, John, a bequest. A bequest is where you say in your will, I would like to leave X dollars to XYZ charity upon my death before anything else gets divided and so forth. If you want to make a huge gift of any type directly from an IRA, you can do that with a beneficiary designation as well. Again, this doesn't take place until you're deceased. The reason to consider this is that if you have beneficiaries on IRAs or life insurance policies or other employee benefits, other types of accounts, if there is a beneficiary designation, then the funds upon your death go to the beneficiary and are not covered by your will. So if I had an IRA and my will said I leave everything to Father Mike, but my IRA said my beneficiary is John Butler, John would receive that IRA because it never gets to the will. The only property
Okay.
that actually gets to the will is property that did not have either a beneficiary or some kind of joint ownership. So we can't think of the will as the only document or the only thing. And again, that's why I suggest that most people have a lawyer, because people think, oh, I left everything to my favorite charity or favorite family member or whatever in the will, but a lot of property won't pass that way. So
Okay.
with an IRA, IRAs are phenomenal to leave to a spouse, your widower, your widow. That has an exception to the 10-year rule. A spouse can continue that for his or her lifetime. That's a big deal. But to leave an IRA to any other human means you're subject to the 10-year rule. There's no stretch IRA anymore. So what a lot of people are doing is they're naming their spouse as the primary beneficiary, but they're naming their favorite charity or charities as the contingent beneficiary. So basically, if my wife and I are in the same accident and we're both deceased, the charity becomes the beneficiary on that account. And again, it's not taxable. There's no 10-year rule. There's no income tax. It goes directly to charity, and it's no longer included in your estate. So we haven't talked about estate taxes. Estate taxes are different than income taxes. Income taxes are where they get you for making money while you're here. Estate taxes are trying to take money from you when you're gone. And we can talk about that over a different conversation. But for today, just know that estate taxes are levied upon larger estates, and every state in the U.S. has a different set of rules. Some have no estate tax, some have inheritance taxes instead. And the difference between an estate tax and inheritance tax is the estate tax is paid by the estate before money goes to heirs. The inheritance tax is paid by heirs when they receive it. Maryland is the only state in the United States that has both. This is the only state in the U.S. that taxes you coming and going. So at the end of the day, leaving an IRA directly to charity is a very effective way to do this. And there are things that you can do if you're worried about what you're leaving to your kids. And we're going to talk a little bit about this. There are things you can do to reposition some of the assets so your kids are getting a different asset than the IRA, and you're still leaving a really significant gift to charity. There's a note here about IRA conversions. We had talked about whether IRA conversions are a good income tax strategy. They are. They are not a good charitable strategy. Okay. Now HSAs are health savings accounts. Health savings accounts have a very special place in my heart because they are the greatest tax vehicle ever invented by our Congress. And the reason for that is that any American taxpayer who is in a high deductible healthcare plan can be HSA eligible, can fund an HSA, get a tax deduction for the contribution every year, grow the money for as long as they'd like, doesn't have to stay in cash, they can invest it, and then they can take money out tax-free. It is the only thing that has tax deductible on the way in, tax deferred on the way, and then tax-free on the way out. One caveat: if you leave it to anyone other than your spouse, it is 100% taxable the year you die. So you need a plan for your health care. And so retirees, one of the things retirees think about a lot is healthcare. I mean, it's one of our most expensive, one of our biggest line items in our personal budgets as we age. So the nice thing about the HSA is you can file claims that are years old. So you can grow the money and then pay 5 years worth of claims if you feel like it, and take that money after it's grown a little bit. You can also use it toward long-term care. You can use it toward Medicare premiums. You can use it later in life. For married people, as long as you've named your spouse as primary, you're okay, and you can begin to use those funds once you're 65. If you are not married, or if you are married and you're thinking about a contingent, HSAs should really never be left to kids. They don't get to inherit it with the ability to use it for their own health care. It is fully taxable. The government's going to take nearly half of it the year you die, and that defeats the purpose of the HSA to begin with. So of all the things that you can leave to charity, HSAs are absolutely number one on the list. Qualified retirement plans, that's your 401k, your 403b. Those are for this purpose exactly the same as an IRA. For this purpose, if you name a beneficiary on a 401k and you name a charity, they receive that money and they receive it without paying taxes. So that's a big deal. But beneficiary designations are important. When we sit down with folks, we see a lot of people either don't have beneficiaries on their accounts at all, which is problematic, or they have beneficiaries that aren't right. They've named their former spouse still, or they've named their firstborn, but now they have 3 children and they never updated it, and they're going to disinherit 2 of their babies by accident.
Yeah.
None of these things make Thanksgiving better for the family after the fact. So it's better to figure this out again, do the planning now so that there aren't hard feelings later. Do everything you can to communicate with your family today and to keep the communication positive moving forward. And creating a philanthropic plan in addition to a tax plan is a phenomenal way to involve your kids and grandkids in your own philanthropy and what's important to you.
Are you finding that clients that you serve are actually doing that?
Oh yeah.
What percent would you
Oh
suggest?
gosh, percentage is unfair. Probably a third.
Okay.
Probably a third have a legitimate plan around philanthropy. Everybody talks about plans for retirement or plans for healthcare or plans for, how they're going to spend their money. They've got plans for vacation. They spend more time. Planning a week at Disney than they do a 30-year retirement.
Right.
It's true. And spend almost the same amount on both, by the way, but that's another story. So to me, they're about a third of clients who take philanthropy serious enough to have that in a formal way. The other 2/3, a lot of them are doing annual giving. We have very few people we represent who aren't giving to someone or some organization every year.
Okay.
But it varies. Some people are incredibly generous and some people are less so. And there's lots of reasons for that. But a lot of it, I think, is how you're raised. I think a lot of that starts at home. And if charity begins at home and you've grown up watching your parents give to any organizations, I think you're more likely to adopt that. And so even where we have clients who didn't grow up that way, if we can help them figure out that message for their kids and grandkids, it has an amplifying effect for everybody.
Yeah, you're right. I wonder if we could just do a shift here. And Father Mike, if you could just talk a little bit about the value proposition. Uh, why should people be generous, and why would their generosity to Trinity Missions be so impactful?
Sure. Well, as I mentioned, Trinity Missions has been around over 100 years, and by design, we go into the most needy, abandoned areas. And obviously, to provide those kind of ministries, whether it be medical clinics or healthcare or sacramental services, or just to support our priests and brothers on mission, we rely almost totally on the goodness of others because we don't run universities and schools. We don't have a natural kind of alumni, so to speak, that many other organizations, schools and universities would have. We're pretty dependent totally on the charity and the goodwill of others to do the work we have on 44 missions in 7 countries, 120 priests and brothers. So it's a big operation internationally as well as domestically. And again, we depend on the goodness and the charity of others, as we always have. And we're deep believers in the good providence of God to provide what we need, and God has done that. But I know God has done that hand in hand with good philanthropic people that Eric's talking about, and that John and I have seen over our years at Trinity Mission. Wonderfully generous people who help us in our missionary work, and they're just essential to it. We strive very hard to get the biggest bang, if you would, out of each dollar that an individual entrusts to us, to ensure that the vast majority of that goes directly to the needs of the missions and the needs of the people we serve. So, yeah, it's essential. That's why I'm so happy that we're able to have this kind of a workshop for people, because we do get a lot of questions from donors who want to contribute and leave a legacy gift and aren't really sure how to do it. So this is wonderful.
And we've been blessed for many years with bequest gifts and
Yes,
annuities and other vehicles as
annuities.
well.
Yeah.
So Eric, what else do you have on the list that you can help us understand better?
I know better than to guess this time. Hannah, this one's up to you. All right. All
Life
right.
insurance.
Let's talk about life insurance. Everyone's favorite topic. It's not morbid at all. No, life insurance can be a really powerful gift because it has the ability to amplify money. So in other words, there are a number of different ways to name a charitable beneficiary to life insurance, either by having your own life insurance that perhaps you no longer need for its intended purpose, and you can just change your beneficiary, or you can have a charitable organization apply for and own a life insurance policy on your life as a donor, and you can make
Mm,
annual gifts to cover those premiums. You don't pay the premiums yourself. You make an annual gift to the organization. The organization then pays the premium. And when you pass away, you have now amplified the gift. Now, there are pros and cons to that. The pros are that it creates a very large amount of money potentially to the organization when the time comes. The cons are, number one, the premiums are rarely optional. So you have to keep up with them or the strategy doesn't work. And number two, you don't, as an organization, want to sort of cannibalize your own annual fund by having people give money that all becomes deferred. So
yeah.
it's a very generous gift. It can create significant windfalls for an organization. I would suggest that it not replace annual giving or routine giving, but that it be gravy on top. That this be something that folks who want to do it, and we've seen a number of major organizations promote these kinds of things. We've done these with schools, we've done them with big charities, national charities, and people who want to make a gift that's larger than they could possibly give themselves can instead make sort of annual contributions to what will eventually be a gift. And whether that creates a naming opportunity at their favorite charity or whether it just becomes, life changing to one of the missions that you're running, whatever is important to them. I think it's really important. I'll take a step back, and that's that no one, I believe truly no one, is making charitable gifts because they want to do tax planning. They're making charitable gifts because they love someone or they love something
Yeah.
or they believe in something and they feel
Yeah.
good about it. And there's an altruism to it. There's a wonderful feeling, and people who are generous tend to have an unbelievable warmth and feeling to that. So we're starting with the notion that um, people are, by their very nature, they're benevolent and they want to give to organizations that are important to them. Our objective here is to help them figure out how, not whether to do it or not. People aren't going to watch a webinar like this and say, oh, now I'm going to start donating money to. That's not how it works. These are people who already have philanthropic intent. They want to make a gift. They don't know how, and they would like some coaching and some advice and some ideas to help them do that and help them support what's near and dear to them. So just to use that. One more thing on life insurance. A lot of folks can use what's called a wealth replacement trust, and that is essentially to have a life insurance policy purchased on their own lives to replace, for example, their IRA value, so they can leave the IRA to charity and feel good about it without taking it out of their mouths or their kids. And
Uh-huh.
so for people who are very concerned about, I want to make sure that the kids receive, say, equally, or that they receive a certain amount of money, or that their lifestyle is unchanged, and all, for people who really want to benefit their family in that way, this doesn't have to be attention. And life insurance can be a great solution to that. Because let's say you had $200,000 in an IRA and you wanted to leave that to charity. If you left it to your kids, they were going to pay tax on it. They were going to get about $120,000. If instead you bought life insurance and you had a $150,000 or $200,000 even insurance policy that would then go to the kids when the IRA goes to charity, the IRA gets the full amount of money. The charity gets the full amount of money, pays no tax. The life insurance goes to the kids, not taxable, not income taxable, and
Mm-hmm.
everybody wins
Yeah.
and everybody feels good about it. And you don't have to feel like I'm choosing between my favorite charity or my favorite grandson. Nobody wants to do that. Like you can be helpful to both. There's no reason to do it that way. So that's just life insurance is an incredible tool for philanthropy. It's an incredible tool also for equalization of inheritance. It's a permission slip to give the rest of your money away, whether it's while you're alive or when you die.
That's helpful.
So that's
With,
any
with,
any
with
other
this,
questions?
Well, just related to that, this would also be, and I'm just thinking of beneficiary designations in general, that could be a way too for those who are interested in establishing endowments, in memory, of a parent or
Yes.
loved one. This could be a perfect way to fund an endowment.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because what you're doing is you're doing gradual funding of what will ultimately be a large corpus, a large lump sum gift. And if that lump sum gift, if Trinity Mission has an endowment program and you have a named endowment funds and other things, and you're able to do that, all you
Mhm.
need to do is let the donor who wants to participate that in know how much it needs to be, and then you can use life insurance dollars, even an existing policy or a new one, depending on health and age and all those factors. But there are ways to do that, and you can create that endowment when you're gone. Great point.
Yes, very good.
All right, Hannah, let's move on. I promised you I would talk about these, John. Here they are. Donor advised
They
fund.
are.
Donor advised funds, or DAFs, are also a relatively new strategy. And to give you a sort of an understanding of where this started, it started because, for two reasons. One, because very wealthy families were creating foundations, and families who were not very wealthy didn't have the means to do that. They couldn't create an entity that would then create giving forever in that same way. At the same time, there was enough of a tax law change, and this goes back to SALT, the state and local income taxes, where now there is a cap on how much all of us can deduct of, for example, our state income taxes or other income taxes against the federal return, and it's capped at $10,000. In addition, to trade off for that, Congress said, well, now we're going to raise the standard deduction. And they raised the standard deduction, which is that amount that you get to deduct from your taxable income before you calculate your taxes every year. Whether you're charitable or not, it is the standard number. You can use this. So people have to choose every year, do we take the standard deduction or do we itemize on our tax returns and take an itemized deduction? If
Mhm.
you take an itemized deduction, it goes on your Schedule A, and that would include charity. So if you're giving away enough money that it's more than the standard deduction, you can still deduct those charitable contributions by itemizing. But for 90+% of American households, they don't itemize anymore, which
Yeah.
means the gifts that used to be deductible are no longer deductible because you're taking the standard deduction. Lots of charities were very scared of this. The fear was, oh my gosh, people were doing this because of the tax planning. And actually, anecdotally, it hasn't proven to be the case. People are still as philanthropic as they were, which is a lovely thing to see. However, they're not benefiting from a tax perspective for making those annual gifts. What a donor advised fund allows you to do is it allows you to time a larger gift and then to allocate those funds to charities over as many years as you choose. So let's say, for example, that you're giving $5,000 a year to your favorite charity, whatever it is, and that you're taking the standard deduction. So every year you write a check for $5,000, and that's lovely, but it doesn't create any kind of tax benefit to you. It's
Mhm.
generous, it's important, you feel good about it, but it doesn't create a tax benefit. Well, what if instead you funded a donor advised fund with, say, $25,000, and the donor advised fund gave $5,000 to charity every year? You would get to deduct the full 25,000 the year you made the contribution to the DAF. The charity would be no worse off for wear. They're still getting their
Right.
donation every single year, but you got a tax benefit from making that larger gift. Now, there are other really nice things about the DAF, which is once money's in there, it can be invested, it can grow, and there's no capital gains because it's already a charitable fund. You can time how you want to give gifts directly from that fund, lots of different ways. I told you can't fund it, a QCD can't fund it, but other gifts can. And it's a great way to use appreciated securities. So, one of the things we
Mm.
didn't talk about is writing a check to make a gift is one of the least efficient ways to do it. It's easy, it's quick. You go online and you send $50. But for gifts that are potentially larger or where there's options, to give gifts of securities, to give mutual funds or exchange traded funds or shares of stock or bonds or any of those kinds of investments means that you don't have to sell them first, pay taxes on the gain, and
Right.
then give the gift to charity. You can give the shares directly to charity. The charity can sell them and pays no capital gains because they're
Right.
exempt, and everybody wins. So you're
Mhm.
making the same gift you would have, but you're avoiding taxation to get the cash to make the gift, which means either you're saving taxes or you're making a larger gift or both. Everybody wins. So you can use highly appreciated securities. You can use mutual funds to fund the DAF in a year where maybe markets were really good, or you wanted to you were going to itemize your deductions. You make a large gift to a donor advised fund from securities. You can then convert that to cash or securities or anything you want in the account because it's no longer taxable. And then you make distributions to one or more charities from that every year or as often as you want. It's
Yep.
also a great way to become a little mini family foundation. So we talked about family communication. With a donor advised fund, you can sit down and have conversations with your 8 grandchildren and say, our family has this fund and we're going to give some money away. I'd like each of you to think about where we could send $100 this year. And now you're teaching young people the value of philanthropy. I did this with my daughter many, many years ago when she was little, and she got to pick charities, and she chose one charity which was for sick children and one which was for animals. It was age appropriate, reasonable stuff. But I showed her how to do it, and it was such a good conversation, and she felt so good about it that it's in her head that this is something we do. And so it becomes a tool to teach your family. It becomes a tool to perpetuate your giving. It's a fund that if you die while you still have a balance can be taken over by one of your family members, and you can name that successor owner so the money doesn't go away. And you can add to it whenever you want. So you might, instead of making annual gifts, you might decide to put money in your DAF every 5 years and then to drip it out to charity any which way you want to. Charities don't care, frankly, whether it comes from a DAF or from your checkbook. But your checkbook might care because you might have paid less taxes, or you might have been able to grow the money without capital gains along the way. So lots of wins. There are lots of ways to set up a donor advised fund. Some of them are through larger foundations. If they are 6-figure funds, there's some sophisticated ways to do this, but there can also be very small funds. There are organizations where you can start a fund with $500 or $1,000, and you can start teaching your kids how to do this. This doesn't have to be for very wealthy people.
And
And so
Eric,
that's part. Oh,
I'm going
go
to
ahead.
interrupt real quick because we do have a question about donor advised funds. It's from
Okay.
Scott. He said, it's pretty easy to set up a donor advised fund, isn't it? For example, Fidelity, is there an attorney required?
Well, the great question, Scott. Thank you. And Hannah loves to interrupt me, so that was perfect. First of all, yes, it's extremely easy to set up a donor advised fund, and no, it does not require a lawyer. These are very easy to set up. Yeah, he mentioned Fidelity. It can be Vanguard, it can be Daffy. I mean, Daffy.org is a donor advised fund. It sounds like a cartoon, but it is a terrific donor advised fund. It's an app on your phone that you can share with your kids. I mean, there's so many ways to do this.
We have
It is not expensive.
a standing relationship with the National Catholic Community Foundation, and so there is another organization that we work with on a regular basis that's available.
And those kinds of partnerships can also be extremely helpful because the community foundation or what have you can sort of aggregate those gifts and help with the management of them and potentially keep some of the costs down as well.
Yeah. There's some limitations for some of those institutions as to what type of funds they will actually be distributing, and your role as an advisor, you can't really require them to make a distribution.
Well, no. Donor advised funds do not require annual distributions. They don't. I think there was concern among some circles politically that people would use donor advised funds to sort of trap money and never actually get it to charity.
Yeah.
That, again, has not been proven to be what happens. I'm sure there are abuses somewhere. It is what it is. But the vast, vast majority of people are using these tools the way they were meant to be used, which is to be philanthropic, to do this regularly, and just to be opportunistic about when you do the funding. So, no, Scott, good question. These are very easy. They can be very inexpensive. This is not a heavy lift, and it doesn't require a huge amount of money. Now, some organizations will have minimums. Some might even have maximums. But there are countless numbers of these, and you can find one in your community, or it sounds like John's got a resource you can talk to if you want to help here. There's a lot of ways to do it, but all of them are wonderful. As far as I'm concerned, this is just a great way to involve your loved ones, your family members in your philanthropy if you choose. You could also do it all by yourself. But if you want to make this sort of educational in nature, you can do that as well. And I think it's really great. I think it's a super way to get people thinking about this stuff.
Eric, I have another question that came through.
Great.
From Robert, DAF donations. Is this donation to a 501c3?
Yes, ultimately it will be. The donation itself to the DAF is the charitable gift on your tax return. They will send you a charitable gift. It will send you the tax form you need in order to claim that for your return. And then gifts can be made from the DAF to eligible organizations, which typically are 501c3s. They're not for political action committees and those kinds of things.
Okay, good to know.
Yes,
Eric, I
I'm
really
sure.
appreciate.
Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say I really appreciate, and you've said this several times, the importance of communication with family and getting your children into a little routine of family philanthropy and making them aware of your favorite charity and
Yes.
just sharing that. I think that's really vital. And I think in the work that John and I and the rest of our staff do, uh, we see the value of that, but often how that doesn't happen.
Yeah.
And the donor goes, who is maybe very generous to us, and their family had no idea. No
Yeah.
idea.
No,
So I really
that's
appreciate
absolutely
it.
true. Philanthropy starts at home.
Yeah.
It just does, and it needs to be from the heart. This isn't something that's done. There's no nefarious donors, or if there are, I haven't met one yet. This is designed to be beneficial to lots of different parties involved. And I think we have a recap slide here, Hannah, that again puts in front of us all of the different solutions. And there they are, a couple of different options. I'm happy to entertain any questions, either Father Mike from you or John, or from our audience. At the end of the day, it's important to understand that if you have property or assets that you want to designate for charity and you want to do it today, or you want to do it upon your passing, the short answer is almost always yes, there is a way. We need to find the right tools. The name of the tools don't matter. I could wow you with 10 different kinds of trusts and you'd glaze over and not care. There are tools out there and people who know how to do this. The key is first to say, this is something important to me and I want to do it. And then we can help find the tools to amplify your gift to make it the most effective and work with the organization to make this as wonderful as it can be. I mean, whether it's
Mhm.
your personal residence, or it's shares of securities, or it's cash, or it's a life insurance policy, or whatever it is, if you have the intention to do good, and you've done well, and you want to do good, there are lots of ways to do that, and it's about identifying your desire and then coming up with solutions. The solutions don't matter in the absence of desire.
Before
Eric,
we go to
what?
the question,
Go ahead,
go ahead,
John.
Father Mike.
No, I was just you didn't mention, or maybe you didn't. I missed it. Donation of real estate. What's the
Mhm.
pros and cons of that?
Well, first, there's lots of pros and cons to real estate gifts, depending on what kind they are. Certainly, if it's your personal residence,
Hmm.
there are ways to gift that upon your death. There are also ways to use certain kinds of trusts where you can actually donate your house while you still live in it and stay in
Yes.
it until you die, and then have. So there are remainder trust options. Um,
Hmm.
First, you have to make sure that the organization you're supporting can handle a gift of real estate, because if they can't, that becomes a problem. They now have a piece of
Yeah.
property they don't want. For example, don't try and give a timeshare to charity.
No.
You can't
Yeah.
get rid of it, neither can they. They don't want it. It costs them money. Do not give a
Yeah.
timeshare to charity. They will not take it. And if I'm speaking out of turn, you're both laughing, so I assume this is true.
Yeah. That's true.
Yeah, don't try and offload your albatross to somebody. That's not what this is about. But yes, real estate can be a good gift. And what most charitable organizations will do with real estate is they will sell it. They will pay no capital gains, and they'll
Right.
repurpose the proceeds for their own use. Now, there's some exceptions to that. If you have commercial real estate, if you have an office building, for example, the charity might decide, hey, we can now inhabit this, or we can use it. And
Hmm.
there are ways to actually make charitable gifts without giving the building away, just by allowing the charity to be in the building and not pay rent. I mean, there's
Okay.
all
Yeah.
kinds of ways
Yeah.
to be supportive with real estate, and it all comes down to what's important to you. Your kids might say, "Mom, Dad, I don't want to inherit this piece of real estate. We're never living in it. We don't want it." In which case, they were going to sell it anyway. Well, if
Yeah.
they're going to sell it anyway, maybe it becomes a really good tool for charity, whether it's usable by the charity for that purpose or whether it's going to be sold.
Okay. Thanks.
How about before we went to questions, how about a word about gift annuities? Because that's the other thing that we've noticed and donors are asking us about more frequently.
So gift annuities are a really interesting phenomenon because what happens with a charitable gift annuity, and I don't know if you all have charitable gift annuities in your arsenal right now. If you do,
We do.
a charitable gift annuity, if you already have one, that's great. It is a way for someone to donate property or whether it's dollars or what have you to an annuity fund that's going to pay them an income for the rest of their lives. And when they die, the remainderment goes to charity. Typically, that's how it's used. There's some variations, but typically that's how it's used. The challenge with charitable gift annuities is none of us know our own mortality. So, donors don't know if they're going to live 1 year or 41 years. And so there's a game of large numbers being played for the organization. If you all have these annuities, it's a great way for somebody to say, here's property I'd like to donate. I need the income, but I don't need the remainderment. The charitable gift becomes a calculation for how much is actually a deduction because to get complicated, it's the net present value of the amount of the gift that would actually be actuarially expected to be remaining after your death. That's a mouthful, but what it means is it's a split gift. The income is still yours, but the corpus ultimately goes to charity. And if you already have one of these, it's a great way to supplement your income, especially if you have property that you simply don't want to have and pay taxes on. If you have large capital gain property, you donate that to the annuity, you can then take an income from it. Now, the income is going to be taxable income to you, but at least you're not paying the capital gains on the gift itself.
Okay, great.
Charitable gift annuities are great. It pays to be older. If you're trying to be charitable, the older you are, the better that deal gets.
So that's at least one advantage to maturing.
No, there's lots of it. The older I get, the more advantages I'm determining, actually, John. Thanks for noticing.
That's great.
Yeah. No, look, the QCDs require you to be a certain age.
Yep.
All of these things are better when you're older, except probably life insurance, which is easier to get when you're younger.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, even then, life insurance as a gift, if you already own it, can be a whole lot more attractive to a charity if you're 93 than if you're 43. They'll still be happy to have it, but they may not see it for 50 years.
Sure.
Any other questions, Hannah, in our queue?
Yes, I do have one question. When beginning this process,
Yeah.
what are some key questions I can initially ask when giving so that I can maximize benefits for both me and the organization I'm working with?
It's a great question. That should have been a slide. Actually, you're hired. What that should be, the first questions you want to ask are to ask the charity what they need. I really think this starts with need. What do you need? I know when I went to give a donation to my daughter's school, one of the first things I asked was where is their need? Where is there a need for this, so that we could try and fit our intent to the need that they had. So that's one way to do it. From a pure tax perspective, it means having your own inventory done. Have your own plan so that you know where your assets are so that you can get some advice. You don't want to ask for this advice in a vacuum. If you went and called John today and say, John, I'd like to make a gift of $10,000. How do I do it? John doesn't know your finances from anybody. He'd be delighted to have you write a check. For sure, I'm sure, but that may not be the best solution for you. So you have to have inventory. You have to know where everything is. What's in real estate, what's in IRAs, what's in Roths, what's in life insurance, what's in cash, what's in savings bonds in a safe deposit box somewhere. What's the property? And then you can marry what your need is in terms of your own income for the rest of your life and what's excess. What can you afford to give away today and what do you need to wait to give away later? And then how do we handle the tax bill? How do we eliminate a tax bill if we can? So great question and a hard answer. I mean, there's lots of questions you could ask, but I typically begin with need. Where is the need? And then we start to look at the availability and the capacity to give. If Father Mike says what we need is a gift of $8 million, I'm going to say, I can't write you that check, Father Mike. I wish I could, but I can't. So there's always a scenario where the need might be grossly beyond your capacity or vice versa. He might say what we really need is $8.43. And I'll be like, okay, I can do that. Let's figure it out. Yeah. So start with the need and then figure out your wherewithal. And if you're not sure, have your financial advisor crunch some numbers, figure out how much of your nest egg do you need to live on predictably without running out of money for the rest of your lifetime. And if there's excess that you can start using toward philanthropy today, go for it. That's fantastic. If there isn't excess, or you're concerned that you might have some financial trouble if you give away a lot of corpus, then you can find other ways to donate. And you can also look at bequests. You can look at beneficiary changes. You can look at holding off until you've got your QCDs. Some of it depends how old you are and what's available to you. But if you want to do this, there is a way. It's a matter of finding the best one for you that is in harmony with what the organization needs.
Great. And I do have one more question from Michael.
That's great. We got
lots of questions today.
Okay.
What is the relationship between BFG Financial Advisors and Trinity Missions?
There isn't one. I'll let you guys answer that too. There isn't one. John and I were classmates in Leadership Maryland, and he saw me do a program like this for another organization and said, "My gosh, would you do one of these for our donors and our audience?" And I said, "Yes." I have no relationship with them other than I thought it was a worthwhile mission and a worthwhile cause, and I thought I could help a little bit.
Yeah, and we appreciate that, Eric. And I think our desire to provide something like this to our donors, alumni, mission partners, has come out of their requesting it of us. So we're really thrilled that you have stepped up and have generously provided this.
Well, sometimes donations are volunteering. So at the end of the
This is
day, you sort of do the best you can in various ways. And so it was a reasonable question and a fair question. We have there's no skin in the game here for us. There's nothing here for us to be involved in terms of the success of a program. This isn't there's no relationship other than we're friends, and they're doing good work.
Yeah, we did think it was important, though, that we have an opportunity to get some clarity on a lot of vehicles, especially given some of the inquiries we've had recently from some of our loyal supporters. And this has provided a great way to do that. One thing that I learned very early about Eric when we met during our Leadership Maryland days is that he had a lot of information, and he was pretty good at sharing it. And it's been true to form today, Eric. Really, really appreciate your generosity, giving us the time. And certainly sharing the wisdom with us.
Yes.
I sincerely hope that there's some folks who are on our webinar today or who watch this after the fact who have been sort of sitting on this idea that they'd love to do something. They're not sure how, and I hope they get in touch with you. I mean, that's a huge win as far as I'm concerned.
All right. Great.
Great.
And thank you, Hannah, too.
Yes.
Great job, guys. Thank you.
Yeah, Hannah should come on camera now and say hello. No, she doesn't have to do that. She doesn't she's very shy, except when she's interrupting me. Then she's okay.
Yeah.
Well,
I do have one more question. If you guys have.
Oh, excellent! Of course, yes, absolutely.
What recommendation would you give on selecting a financial advisor to meet my needs?
Well, that's an excellent question, and I refuse to answer it in a self-serving way. There's some very general questions that I think are important to ask a financial advisor. And I know it becomes a shameless plug. I actually wrote a book on how to do this, and we have a free white paper on this as well in terms of the kinds of questions and how to do this. You can go to whatisfp.com. And whatisfp.com is a free download of what is financial planning, what should be included, what can you expect. I do think it's important to interview a few advisors and see where you're comfortable. You typically don't want to be somebody's biggest client or their smallest client. You want to be in the wheelhouse of the kind of folks that they represent. And you need to feel good about it. And you need to have a connection because it's ideally it's a long-term relationship and not a transactional one.
Great.
Excellent.
I
like that question. Who teed that up?
It is a good one.
Father Mike, do you have any closing words for our audience?
No, just thanks. I mean, as I think Eric mentioned, I don't know exactly who's watching today or participating, but I suspect there are individuals who have already been very generous and have kept Trinity Missions in their mind and their hearts in a variety of ways, through their donations, through their prayers, or helping us in our efforts in other areas. So I'm just grateful to them. Certainly grateful to you, Eric, and your organization, your company, and Hannah, And to the staff of Trinity Missions, John, particularly Amy, who on a day-to-day basis, try to bring the resources needed to provide for our missionary efforts across the globe. So really just sense of gratitude to everyone. And I do pray that the information today struck a chord with some who might pursue and who got the response or the information that they hope to from this workshop. So thank you.
Thank you, Father Mike, and thanks again, Eric, and thanks to all of you who joined us today. Are obviously interested in chatting further with you. If you have any questions, you can contact us through the web, trinitymissions.org. Look forward to chatting with you in the future.
Amen.
Bye-bye.
Take care.
Thank you.